One day, Jesus said a very strange thing to his disciples. There be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. You can imagine how they must have looked at each other, wondering what he meant and who the favored ones would be. Did he mean that before all the disciples should die, he would begin his reign as King of Love in all the world? If so, how wonderful. But Jesus didn't mean that at all. He had something else in mind. As it turned out, the favored ones were Peter, James, and John. Jesus took them off by themselves, which led them up a high mountain, possibly Mount Hermon, which is almost always snow-capped. Up the steep slope they followed their beloved Master, till all were weary with the climb. When at last near the summit, Jesus stopped. They were ready to lie down and sleep. In fact, their eyes were so heavy with sleep that they almost missed the most wonderful sight that human eyes ever saw. They had often seen Jesus praying before, but never like this. His face was glowing with the glorious heavenly light. His garments were glistening as when the sun shines upon purest snow. He looked like a king, but more than a king. Yes, he looked like God. Then they saw something else that startled them. From nowhere, it seemed two strangers appeared and stood by Jesus. The disciples stared at them. Could they be angels? No, they were men all right. There was no doubt about that. But who were they, and how had they come so suddenly upon this mountaintop? The disciples had no way of knowing who these two people might be, nor had they seen any likeness of them at any time. But Jesus knew them and talked with them as if they were old friends of his, as indeed they were. One was Moses, the other was Elijah. But weren't these two people dead? No. After Moses died on Mount Nebo, God raised him from the dead, as we understand from the book of Jude. As for Elijah, he never died, but was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. So here on this mountaintop, Jesus gave his three most trusted disciples a picture of what is going to happen in that glorious day when he will return to set up his kingdom. On that happy morning, he will appear in all his glory as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then all who have died believing in him will be raised to life, as Moses was, and those still living will be caught up in the clouds to meet him in the air, like Elijah. After a while, Moses and Elijah vanished. When they were gone, Peter said to Jesus, "Let us make 3 booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." It was a foolish thing to say at such a time. In very sacred moments like this, it is always very good to keep quiet and say nothing at all. Jesus did not answer, and a moment later a cloud came down and covered him. Presumably from the cloud came a voice, rich, beautiful, and full of melody, and it said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him." Thus again, God claimed Jesus as his own Son, as he had done once before by the river Jordan when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. Terrified, the 3 disciples fell on their places. How long they stayed like this, we do not know, but by and by each felt a familiar touch on the shoulder. "Get up," said Jesus gently. "Don't be afraid." They looked up and saw Jesus only. Why did Jesus let Peter, James, and John have this wonderful experience? Because he knew they would need it in the sad, trying years ahead. It would help to keep up their courage when his cause would appear to be lost and everything would seem to go wrong. The Prince of Teachers was right. The disciples never forgot that marvelous sight on the mountain. Long years afterward, Peter wrote about it, saying, "We were eyewitnesses of his majesty." And John, in the first chapter of his gospel, said, "We beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father." For the rest of their lives, this was one of their most precious and sacred memories. This reading is for a special feast on the church calendar. Do you know what it is? It is for the feast of the Transfiguration.